Good afternoon, beautiful women. My name is Kathleen McLean, originally McLean Group. Now we are the McLean Collective. We are a leadership consulting firm, bringing humanity to the workplace through training, gap analysis, and other speaking engagements. The other part of my life is I've been married to my high school sweetheart for 32 years. He is the love of my soul. You know, he follows me on Facebook. Every other post is about Mark. And I have 4 children, 28, 27, 23, and 20. How do I lead? When I think of leadership, I do think of Miguel Ruth, the book, The 4 Agreements. I always keep that in the forefront of my heart and my mind when I'm working with my team, when I'm interacting with people. Don't take things personally. Don't make assumptions. Do your very best and be impeccable with your word. It's for Valentine's Day, so I have a lot of love in my soul for the world. I was born to live, love, and lead out loud, and I believe that every single person on this earth is doing the best they can with what they have at the moment. And that's how I approach the way I lead with my team, knowing that and working with clients. No one does anything bad just to do it bad. Sometimes they don't know. And I think when we know better, we do better. So I approach with grace and I approach with love.
Hello. My name is Christina Farinacci-Roberts, and I always say I am the proud daughter of a Korean immigrant tiger mom and an Italian-American veteran dad, and I'm a first-generation college graduate who went on to become one of the youngest New York State high school principals and then eventually the founder of an award-winning education and equity consultancy. In the work that I do now, I'm very fortunate that when I decided to go into business, which was probably for the most unsexy reason, my mom was diagnosed with the beginning stages of Alzheimer's back in March of 2017, so it's been 7 years. So God be the glory, she's in a very slow progression, and she's as healthy and happy as I want her to be. But at the time, my son was almost 2, and I really felt that sandwich generation pressure of having to care for an aging parent and taking care of a young child, and had been hustling and grinding as a principal for 10 years, and felt just called to step away, and I let my board know I need you to find a replacement, and I don't have another job lined up, I don't have a plan B, I do still have a mortgage for which I am the primary breadwinner and I have to figure something out. So I decided to start my consultancy and was able to actually outrun my principal salary in the first full year, had a nice thriving business until I did on the pandemic hit a few years later, and my business literally went to 0 in a weekend. And within 6 months, I wound up partnering with my best friends in 2nd grade. We started a joint venture from a pretend podcast that literally had 10 subscribers, but one of them was global head of people for a global legal services company. She wanted some wellness work, some diversity, equity, and inclusion work, and asked if we would partner to pitch something. I was like, that's genius. We're going to create a wide framework. So basically, in the work that I do now, I do corporate consulting, I do consulting, I also do some entrepreneurial consulting, but the umbrella to everything is essentially I am trying to redesign the future of work and transform work into a labor of love and workplaces into communities of care and workforces into guilds of glory. And when it comes to leadership, I did create something called the Solarized Leadership Model. It's based on 4 elements of soul. First is satisfaction, increasing people's pride, joy, and fulfillment in the work that they do and the lives that they live. The O is for optimism. It's about improving your outlook on what's possible and your capacity to rise and excel. The U is for working. It's about embodying the spirit of abundance and assuming there's provision for whatever is needed. And then the last one is L for love, and that's about igniting people's passion and purpose and igniting and rooting that down in the most universal element of the human condition, which is love, because everybody is really motivated by that. So.
If you don't know, it's a framework.
So my name is Chitara. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I started my leadership journey almost 20 years ago at Albany Leadership Charter High School for Girls as one of the founding members of that charter school. And at the time, I signed on to be a social worker, and the school didn't know they needed a guidance counselor, so that's basically what I became in that time. So after that, I went on to have other leadership roles, mostly in education, now in healthcare. So I'm leading one of the #1 FQHCs in our country, down in the Bronx. And I love it. I love what I do there. Additionally, when the pandemic started, I got really afraid that I was going to lose my job because like a quarter to almost half of our workforce at the company was, laid off, furloughed, right? They were furloughed. So I was like, all right, what am I going to do if I get furloughed? Because at the time I was overseeing the school programs. And I was like, let me lean back into my social work background and start thinking about therapy. So that's when I started a wellness company, mostly focusing on ecotherapy, bringing people out into nature, leading hikes, taking kids camping, stuff like that. And I really was like, oh, I like this. I could do this full time. I don't really want to go back to work, but I did, and my career is thriving. But really what I want to do in my lifetime that will make me happy for free is continuing to lead kids to mental well-being, making sure that they find happiness and joy. A lot of our young people are diagnosed with anxiety and depression primarily, and my love of that work is just, it's abundant. I really love it. I believe in it, and I want to continue to thrive to be a better social worker, both in my business and the work that I do at our healthcare center. So in terms of leadership, I think my leadership has evolved because when I started at Albany Leadership, and even when I went back down to the Bronx to do leadership work there, I was just trying to make it, right? Like just trying to put out fires, and that's kind of what education is, putting out fires all day long. And now what I've learned and what I feel comfortable with is leading by example. And that meant that I had to change a lot of the ways in which I thought I should be as a leader, because a lot of times we expect people to do things and they expect us to do things based on our title. Like, you're the director, you're the executive director, you're the CEO, you're the manager, you're the this. No, we're all kind of in this together. I can learn from you, you can learn from me, and that creates for me a sense of responsibility to each other where we're meeting the goals of whatever we're working on. So that has been something that I've shifted in my leadership, and learning that I don't have to kind of like run around like a chicken with my head cut off to get the work done and feeling like it's all on me. We have a shared responsibility to meet like our deliverables, no matter what they are, no matter what project we're working on. And we were talking about balance. I learned very quickly that there is no such thing like, oh, leave your personal life at the door, and then when you go home, leave your work at work. That, for me, that doesn't exist. My life and my work like intermesh all the time, and there's nothing I can really do to change that, and I'm not working at changing it anymore. Before I thought I had to, I thought there was balance. I don't really believe in that anymore. So it's definitely shifted over time, and I found comfort in just trying my best to lead by example and have people enjoy coming to work.
I love hearing that from all of you. So all of you people who were cold earlier, I walked in here with hot flashes. I'm at that premenopausal stage in my life. I just turned 50 back in November. So it's killing me. So I cooled down and now I'm hot again. So, but anyway, I founded Baker Public Relations almost 17 years ago. My son was just 7 months old. So I've been very, very blessed with children, having a son that's now 17, identical twin girls that are a reckon, a force of nature, I guess, on the basketball court. But I can't wait for them to, see how they develop through the years. They're 14 years old. And then I also have been blessed with 2 beautiful stepdaughters that are 23 and 21. Their mother is here, Louisa Testa. Shout out to her for raising two amazing daughters. And another shout out to her too, because she started her own business as well. A lot of great women in the room. But Baker Public Relations, we're a full-service public relations and marketing agency. We work with startups to Fortune 500 companies, and we are a New York State certified woman business enterprise, and very proud of it, which is super important. So leadership is an evolution. How I led 17 years ago is certainly not how I lead today. Got to have a lot of empathy for people. You're responsible for people. And also just being adaptable, right? And just being authentic and owning it, having some accountability and vulnerability as well. And the vulnerability side of me, I'm proud of it. I was going through a very difficult divorce a few years ago, and I had to lean into my team. So, and being vulnerable is okay, right? I mean, sometimes we think that it shows weakness. It doesn't, it's okay. So I've learned to accept who I am, 50 years old, and it's a lot of wisdom. So I tend to just be very fair, and then trustworthiness is huge too, so.
Okay, so there's multiple kinds of leadership, right? So having a human resource background, I'm thinking people leadership, then I'm thinking process leadership, and then from my current life and how I always lead, as well as self-leadership. So I'm curious, which part of the self-leadership side helped you to lead the people and process side? I know you're business owners or you have the ability to lead people, but also the process of your business as well as yourself. There's so much to lead, like, oh my gosh. So what skills did you have naturally, and what ones did you have to go out and get? Whoever wants.
I'll start. The skill that I think I have naturally, the skill that I know I have naturally is I really deeply care about people. Like everybody has a story, right? And I do really lean into like people's stories, and I understand that we are working with people who have their things at home, and they bring it to work, and they need time off, and they need to come in late. I really deeply care about how my decisions about what I expect from them at work impact their family life, genuinely. So that's the people part of it. That's what I'm really good at. I think the thing that I had to go out there and learn is how to balance that, because people do take advantage of you, and they take advantage of that part of my leadership style. And I had the most struggle with that with team members, right? Like, why aren't you writing them up? Why aren't you firing them? Why do you let them get away with that? And I had to learn how to be confident in my leadership style, and knowing that I have to make very hard decisions that other people don't necessarily have to make, but they have an opinion about. So I've had to learn how to do that, to be honest to myself, and to be fair to the people who are like dealing with life. So that's what I would say.
Also, I just realized that because I felt like I was going on too long, I never said anything about the personal side. So I am married, and I do have a bunch of family. I have an 8-year-old son, and I have a 19-year-old bonus daughter. They're actually 10 years and 364 days apart, because I gave birth the day before her 11th birthday. At 10, 11, I gotta get this figured out. But when it comes to balancing the personal and the professional, I love that you talked about how the common paradigm that we've heard growing up is you leave your personal life at the door, you show up. And I think for me, what was maybe one beautiful part of the pandemic was that totally went to shit, right? Like, the personal is the professional, right? The professional is the personal. And so my whole solarized leadership model is really about marrying your personal essence with your professional excellence, and recognizing that that is the special sauce, right? And I think, and I'm not very too frameworky, but I do have 2 frameworks. So my optimized framework starts with personal flourishing, and it's about how do you optimize your being, because we all have to flourish as a human occupy, whether that's your job, your marriage, your friendships. And so I talk about like, okay, are you activating, cultivating, and aligning? A sound mind, a strong body, a sage spirit. There's different things there. And it's not about me becoming someone's therapist or personal trainer or spiritual guru, but it's helping my clients to figure out what's that rhythm that you can create for yourself where you're nurturing and edifying and honoring all these 3 different facets of yourself in a way that works for you. Because what you look like doing that when you're in your 20s, when maybe you're single, and then when you're in your 30s and you're married and you've got 3 kids under 5, or when you're an empty nester at 60, like whatever, that part will evolve. But if you have like a very intentional strategy for that, I think that's very helpful. And then as that relates to the professional flourishing, like I talk about my ascent framework, and that's about enlightening the head and engaging the heart and empowering the hands. And obviously as people, we are a combination of those 3 things, but I feel like we all do have a good default mode. And so if you're a head person, you're like very data-driven, research theory, stats, numbers, like you kind of come at it from a very analytical place. And my heart people, it's not that we don't, like sort of my default is hard. It's not that we can't do the thinking part or that we won't or that we don't, but that's just not what drives us. We need to know like what's the personal transformation, what's the community impact, how does this improve my team's dynamics so we can achieve that mission and vision. And then the hands people are the people that are like, yeah. What's the tactical support that actually needs to be put in place so that we can share from theory to practice and actually implement the initiative? And I think it's important as a leader to know what your default is and do your best to kind of create this equilateral triangle within yourself. Because I'm a hard first, but my head is like right underneath because I'm super like strategy driven. And the hands piece, I say, yeah, but it's not my favorite. Like, I want to like galvanize everybody around like a mission and a vision, and then give them the strategic plan, and then be like, boom, go forth and prosper, and then I want to go on to the next thing. But thinking about your own teams, like how are we pulling the head, heart, hands together? And I think in an organizational construct, it's like your head is your strategy, your heart is your culture, and your hands is your operations. And what do you have in place to really kind of both codify and operationalize each of those areas?
Thank you. And I think, don't ever apologize for your frameworks, okay? Own your power, your frameworks are beautiful, as you are, right? Right, Lewinsky only has a framework, all these men have frameworks, right? Companies model, they all have frameworks, you have a framework too. You celebrate your framework, Christina Farinacci-Roberts. I wanted to thank Chitara, what you had said, taking advantage of. My strength is my love for people. Like I said, I was born on Valentine's Day. I want to love everyone on my team, and I need to celebrate them with gifts, celebrate them with compliments, celebrate them, little thank you notes. Let's go for a massage, let's go out for treats. The area that I consistently am working on and growing in is holding people accountable. When they don't do something, when they're not up to the bar, they're not measuring or exceeding it. My big thing is customer service with the clients we work with. We have similar synergy in the work that we all have clients, and that is really, really important. And when someone doesn't meet that need, I have come to a place this year, especially with reading some really great books, such as The Magic of Thinking Big by David Schwartz, and Sione's book, The 6 Geniuses, helped me to realize my areas of weakness. And one of them is I hate project management. And therefore, I'm a project manager, and I've been moving her in the direction I take over this project manager piece. And so for me, holding people accountable, but before I always think, why do I want to hurt people's feelings? It's not about their feelings. It's not personal. And therefore, I'm doing it because I think when you tell people the truth, you're really helping them. And I think we live in a society, I work with so many organizations where leaders do not tell people the truth. What they do is move their office. Or demote them. But never tell them the truth, and they go, okay, we'll talk to them. And they want me to tell them the truth. You want to pay me to tell everything the truth? Gladly. Therefore, I think that is an area I'm constantly thinking about and growing, is holding people accountable, speaking truth with love, and understanding the motive I'm coming from is not about hurting your feelings.
So for me, I feel like things clicked at year 10. So my kids were, a little bit more self-sufficient, and I was able to focus more on the business and growing the business and the people, because I was just trying to make ends meet for a while. I tried to really figure it out and build the business slowly and very conservatively during that time. So for me, it was about year 10, and I feel like the agency, because of the people, has really, hit its stride. So here we are celebrating year 17. I'm going to be honest with you, last year, if I have a phrase to describe it, it was what the fuck. Because it was a horrible, horrible year. On so many levels. Our revenue was down by over $350,000. We were losing employees, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And you get into your own head, you have that self-doubt. Can I do this? What's happening? I have an office that I opened in Pittsburgh in late 2019. I had plans to open a third office in St. Petersburg, Florida. I can't do that now. I love that. It's one of my favorites. I say I have the best of both burgs in Pittsburgh and St. Petersburg. But anyway, you get that self-doubt. But so it's just, I guess, taking it all in stride and realizing that you got to give yourself a little bit of compassion. But as far as the leadership, I feel like I'm still growing, and really that year 10 is when it kind of clicked, and it's still clicking. And it's all about now is getting the right people on your team. And I'm so proud of Marissa, who's going to be on the next panel, but she's our Director of Operations. She was a godsend. The universe just opened up, and there she is. So she's done amazing things in the short 6 months that she's been on board.
I feel more confident just hearing her say 10 years.
So I love that you said it's still clicking, because it's still it's always still clicking. I think it clicks for me when I can put other people in leadership positions and they do well. That's when I feel like most empowered and confident as a leader. So it was really about recognizing that I can't do it all, and sometimes I'm not the leader of certain things. I oversee a large team, so we have maybe in all my departments like 60 people. So being able to move people from like entry-level positions to manager positions to like executive board and then the C-suite, that makes me feel like I'm doing a great job as a leader, and it's clicking for me. But it's still clicking, because sometimes I'm like, whoa, what should I do in this situation? How can I step up in this situation? Do I need to not be in the forefront in this situation, or where do I lean in, or who do I uplift? So it's kind of always clicking.
I was 27, about to turn 28 when I got the keys to a New York City high school, or to a New York City high school. And even though I feel like I was a pretty confident person, like, there was something about like getting the keys that I was like, did they realize like they gave me the keys to this building to run this school of these students with these teachers? And I had alternative high school, so my kids were like overage and undercredited, and I had kids from Rikers, and I had kids that had kids, and like we had like so much that we were juggling, and I had staff that were a little disgruntled from the previous leadership, and I literally had one of my teachers who actually now is like beloved to me, but he made a little half joke that he had shoes that were older than me, which was, I'm sure, completely true. So I feel like I've always been in situations where I had to be my own delusional bestie in my head about like, of course you can do this, right? And I think also I have a best friend that we like joke that we're each other's delusional BFF, right? Like we just hype each other up. I don't know if you've ever done your Clifton strength, but we both have self-assurance as our number 4. And my husband like will hear us in conversations day in and day out. He's like, I literally don't understand how 2 people can like just be hyping each other up about things that might happen. Because like they're not always things that have happened. We're like, and then this is gonna happen, and then this is gonna be like, but that's it. Right, yeah. So I think for me, it's like pushing past the thing that I have like come to now is I think about what are the two levers that you need to be a really good leader, and I think it's authenticity and authority. And sometimes some of us are very high on the authenticity. Like we show up, we own who we are, but we haven't necessarily owned our own power or our own expertise or felt like others have validated those things. And so like trying to work on that. Or some of us, like we've always maybe been in positional places of power where we play the game to get to the levels that we are, but we don't ever feel comfortable to like be our truest, fullest selves. And so even if you're like successful on paper over here, there's still like a dissatisfaction or this like aching that's like, ooh. So I feel like that's my sort of litmus test is like when you feel you can fully be authentic and like fully own your authority and your thing, like that is like the pinnacle of true leadership. And to your point, developing that in the people that I lead, or in this case now in myself, like making people feel like their authenticity and their authority is being cultivated.
You got those keys that you were ready for the theater shop?
I know. Yes. The answer is yes.
I was thinking about your question, and Chitara, thank you for helping me with my answer. I feel that the moments for me continue to happen. Every time I go into a space or a place, when someone says to me, because you posted how much you love your husband, how nice you are to him, Kathleen, I'm going to be nice to my husband. People come up to me all the time and say, because you said to read this book, I read this book. And so or because you go on dates now, or because you're mentoring so many women, I decided to mentor women. So for me, I would say that the compliments and comments that I'm getting out in the world when I go out, people are saying to me, you are a leader because of what you're doing. And I appreciate that because people are seeing my actions. Like I don't ever say what I do. There's many, many things I do that nobody knows. But I've been in rooms where 10 women will say, Kathleen did this for me, Kathleen did this for me, and they'll go through 10 things. But I never said, I don't put it on the social media that I did X, Y, and Z. And so what you do in secret, God will show out in the open. You don't have to ever say it, because everyone else is talking about the things you do because it's real and it's authentic. And the other thing, my mother says this, and my family is from Haiti, so I do speak some French and I speak Haitian Creole. My mother said this in an honor of Women's History Month. She says, Kathleen, sa femme veut sur veut, which means what the woman wants, God wants.
All right, so there are many wonderful things that we get to do as leaders. Then there are some not so wonderful things that we get to do as leaders as well. Can you take me to a time where you had to use a personal courage to really execute on a professional situation? And how did you deal with it?
I use personal courage every day.
Walk in the room, I'm here.
So, a time when I use personal courage to do what in a professional situation?
Use personal courage to really execute on a professional, like negative professional situation. Like fire somebody or have an uncomfortable conversation with somebody. People that, many of the things that we don't love doing as leaders, like the non-sexy side of leadership. Beautiful, clear.
So, like I was saying, during the pandemic, when healthcare was really hard to work in, it was very hard, and our company they sent like some people home forever, they never got their job back, some people went home partially, and some people stayed at work. And I was one of those partially people. They called me back sometimes, they didn't want me sometimes. I was like, where am I going? My salary got cut, but my expected hours of work didn't. It was really weird. So my CEO at that time, who was beloved in the healthcare community, was a nightmare. She was mean. And her father founded this company, first Puerto Rican doctor in the Bronx, founded a very, very flourishing community healthcare center. And she's now the president of NAC, which is the National Association of Community Healthcare Centers. And she was nasty. She was mean. She was and these are things that I was like, during this time, this is how we felt. And I remember after every call, because we had to write a reopening plan, because I oversee school-based health centers, which are clinics in schools for kids who are uninsured or underinsured. And she wanted us to write a reopening plan between two very difficult systems, the DOE, which is the New York City Department of Education, and healthcare centers during a global pandemic. And every time I came back to the meeting, she would be like, what is this? What is this? Did you read the guidelines? And she didn't even read my proposal. I'm like, did you read it? Did you open it? I wrote what you're asking for, and now you're asking for it, and you just mean me. So I had to muster up everything in my life to say, why do I need to keep this job? This woman is ripping me apart every single time she gets a chance. And I felt like, and I experienced this, and maybe some workplace trauma, because I also experienced this when I was working in this charter school with someone who was my principal, who I was very close to. I'm still very close to her now. But sometimes when you work with people who you know, they're more treacherous to you. They have no boundaries on how they treat you. And I experienced a little bit of that when I was in high school, and then I experienced a little bit of that during the pandemic. And I would go home and look at my kids, and I would be like, the only reason I'm going back to this job is because I need to feed you. And I think that's the one time I can think about it. I did not want to work with that woman. She was mean. And I really had to find everything in me to get back to work every single day. Her emails were nasty. Her tone was the whole nine. So that was the time.
You were like, yes, you actually need to eat this.
Yeah.
You have snacks on your list.
When I do write a book, I'll dedicate a whole chapter to this, if not more. But one thing that sticks out was with someone that I felt was a mentor. And we'd had a professional relationship for 5 years. He heads up a big executive group locally too. His daughter was a client. And, we'd go to lunch, we'd talk, we'd chat about business, pain points, challenges, this, that, and the other thing. And he hit on me. And it took me by surprise because it didn't register at first, because I'm like, this can't be fucking happening. I mean, we've known each other, there's never been, I'm like, did I hear him correctly? Wait, there's no way. And he repeated it. What I wanted to do is break a glass over his head. I kept my composure. Got the check, I walked out, and that was the end of that. I fired his daughter. They had no reason, but immediately, and then I went back and talked to one of our senior team members who was head of that account and had to tell her what happened. So that's one thing that I won't stand for. With anybody, I don't care about the money, it's not about the money, it's anything, it's your own self-respect, right? And your own self-worth. So even with my team members, somebody crosses that line, that's it. So that was one instance.
I think one of the most difficult things I had to do, it was a financial issue, it was a financial decision. At the time, my team was smaller, and I was working with someone who was my mentee, and then started to work with me on my team. I just started to look at the numbers more closely with my mentor, Corey Jameson. Anyone knows her? She's a beautiful human being. And I said to her, I said, Corey, look at these numbers. I'm paying her X thousands of dollars a month. She's making more than I am. Significantly more than I am. I feel like I'm working this listen inside. There's great books, there's great podcasts, but your spirit, whatever you call it, I call it the Holy Spirit. Some people call it intuition. Some people call it the ego, super ego, whatever. But inside, every answer that you need for what's going on in your life, you get quiet and the answer is inside. And I'm so glad I listened to inside. The timing was impeccable. And one of my dear friends was able to get her a full-time job in April. She was okay. But if I didn't listen inside, imagine what it would have been like. I would have had to figure out something where my income, like a lot of us, changed as a result. So I say listen inside.
You mentioned Corey as your mentor. Who has mentored you along your road to leadership? I know you have still be mentored and now you have mentees. So who would you say was a mentor in your life? And how have they potentially changed the trajectory of your leadership?
So I had a mentor principal. I was in the New York City Leadership Academy, and we actually did like a year-long residency, the way that doctors do a residency, but they go for principals. And his name is Nigel Pugh. And at the time, the New York City Department of Ed was starting to create like a report card for every school. And as anything that you get audited or, there's like measurements, sometimes what's being measured as success feels actually counter to what really is a measure of success. And I remember he had a meeting with leadership, and he eventually had a meeting with the larger extended stakeholders from parents to students to teachers. That basically he was like, yeah, so, we got to play the game in terms of this is how we're getting measured, so we can't like completely ignore it. But also, we have a set of core values that we believe about what's best for kids and what's best for, our students and our community, and we're going to stick with that. So probably what's going to happen is we're not going to be an A school. We're probably going to be a B, maybe B plus school. And I'm actually really comfortable being a B or B plus school on paper if the kids, if we're doing right by the kids and they're succeeding and thriving in these other ways that are not measured by these pieces. And so I feel like that has always kind of stuck with me, and it's actually served me really well in the entrepreneurial space. Even things like me coming up with this solarized leadership model that really counters a lot of traditional leadership. I had people literally say like, no, you can say soul or love in a school or at a law firm or in a hospital, and I was like, there's probably going to be places where that's going to be frowned upon, but those are probably not my places, and I shouldn't be there. And so, like, that idea that, again, when you stick to your own authenticity and you own the offer you have in whatever it is that you do, it's being comfortable with being called out by people over here or being rejected by people over there. It's just knowing what your North Star is and really remaining in integrity with that piece. And so I feel like that was something that stuck with me and, allows me to kind of keep going when it feels like I might be going against the world.
My mentor is Melissa Cedeno. She's now the director of the EOP, SUNY Albany EOP program, and was the founder of Albany Leadership Charter High School for Girls, where I started my career. And the thing that stands out about her leadership, because leadership is complex, and leading teams is complex, but the thing that stands out about her leadership is she was okay with showing us who she really was, the good, the bad, and the ugly. She was committed to research and making sure that she shared those resources with us. And I take that with me. Like, she really took out time to show us the human part of her, and vulnerability is something that she was very comfortable with, and it still makes me uncomfortable to this day to share a lot too soon. But I think about how she did it in a professional way. And she was my writing teacher when I first came to Albany at SUNY Albany as an EOP student. And I, like I really adore her. I'm very close with her still, and she's a wonderful person. For all of you who are here locally, if you can interact with Melissa Cedeno, it is life-changing. She's hilarious, and a lot of us has had her as a mentor. She's on the Power Podcast with me and Britt, and we had a great time. So I really value that relationship. And one thing I want to say about mentorship is it's necessary. It's not something like, oh, I have a mentor, or I'm somebody's mentor. It's necessary because you lean into that when things get really difficult for you, and they don't owe you an evaluation. It's not your boss. And they love you and care about you, and they want to help you get to that next level. So it's been really transformational for me.
I've been very fortunate to have a number of mentors throughout my life, different areas. From college, Dr. Gail Wilson, who was a professor, to my job in television news when I was in Binghamton, Darlene Fauci, and then Mary Rozak also along the way, who's works for the county executive's office. She's been instrumental in my life. But one of my biggest mentors has always been my mom. She was in a predominantly male business, 25 years in the lumber industry and sales, which is, all men. And, she's always that one that will kind of set me straight and not judge me. So I still look to her. I do have confidants in my life too, which are equally important. Other supportive, strong women, like Denise Dubois, who owns Complexion Spa. She's a dear friend, and I look up to her as well, so she's been a great confidant. So I think it's important to have both.
Yeah, you have to have both. I always said predominantly male and not male dominated. Because let's be honest, we're not dominating anything. It's math. It's not. There's just a lot of them. It's just numbers. That's all about that. Predominantly male.
I wanted to add, when I was speaking, I would say, I grew up with my husband. He's been my mentor, bestie. I've been with him since I was 16 years old. We literally grew up together, and he's probably been my biggest cheerleader and mentor. Though he wasn't my tea, he says things to me at the right moment, and literally changes everything I'm doing. He'll say another like, Kathleen, I don't think that's a good idea. I think you need to work harder on this. Don't hire your friends. He'll say things like that. It's been changing. I want to go back to Dr. Corey Jameson of Corey Jameson Consulting. She leads with courage, and I know Leah was here. She was in a courageous leadership seminar 8 years ago when Corey was doing that. Corey, not only, she's a confidant, she's one of my closest friends, also she's a sponsor. Therefore, there were many things she would just say, Kathleen, just come, I got you. Even today, she's like, well, I have a subscription to this, and she sends them all the passwords, and she's like, you don't have to pay for this. And so she is truly my cheerleader. Like, she's the only person who says, my husband, I'll tell her exactly how much I made, exactly what's going on, and I will tell you what I love about having her as a mentor, sponsor, friend, confidant. They allow you to see yourself in your future, and that's what Courtney does for me. She allows me to see myself in the future because she sees where I'm going.